All right, all right. We got the. All right, let's see what we got here. Are we live? Let's double check. Looks like we are now live on Facebook, folks. I am super excited. Let me double check that we got everything going on the right way. Um, but I am super, super excited for today's guest interview. We've taken a couple days off. We all had a very busy schedule for those of us who are part of our community. This has been a huge month for us in many ways. And so we had this interview scheduled about a week ago, and we decided to go ahead and push it a little bit because both of us were diligently working on the project that we're working on now. But I'm grateful that we now have the opportunity to get together. So, folks, this is Miss Tammy Washington, and as you can see, she is in paradise right now as we speak. Incredible entrepreneur, not only within our industry, but she also happens to operate in the other field of which I have owned businesses in the past, and that as a public speaker, a trainer, international speaker, etc. So I'm really excited to dive in. She's also spent some time for my LA folks. She spent some time in Los Angeles. So it's we've got a lot of connections here. So it's pretty awesome. So Miss Tammy, how are you today?
I am fabulous. Fabulous. I'm so excited to be on with you.
Awesome. So let the people know real quick, where are you tuning in from? Because it's not often that we get palm trees and beach views and all that stuff going on. Where are you?
I am in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic.
And you're not on vacation?
No, I live here.
You live there. So permanent vacation.
Permanent vacation. The dream. Oh my gosh.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, for those people who don't know, why don't you give us a little bit about your background, sort of where you're from and how you grew up, that type of stuff.
Sure. I actually grew up in South Carolina. So I grew up in a very, very small town, very hardworking people, great people. I always tell people, I'm like, South Carolina is like the best place to like grow up. Now, once you grow up, you want to leave and get out and see the world. But it's a great place to grow up because you know everybody. Literally the same people that I went to kindergarten with are the same people I went to high school and graduated high school with. So it really is just kind of that small town atmosphere, which I think was perfect for me. And then after South Carolina, I actually went to college in North Carolina to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
All right, go Tar Heels.
Go Tar Heels. And then I actually spent 15 years in Los Angeles. And I feel like that's kind of where I came into myself and my being and really learned about my purpose and my passions. And then I moved to Atlanta after leaving Los Angeles because I wanted to be closer to family. Came on vacation to the Dominican Republic, met my fiance, and moved here a year later. So yeah.
Awesome.
Crazy journey, right? Crazy journey.
Now, did you always want to live like on an island? Or was that just a bonus that your fiance was also there at the same time?
You know, I never thought that I would live on an island, but I always knew that I wanted to live by the beach. So even when I was a little girl, I had these dreams of moving to California, which is why I ended up in LA, because that was my big dream, was that I was going to live on the beach. I was going to have like this great beach life. And it all goes to show you how we have to trust God in the process. Because I remember leaving California, and even though I wanted to be closer to my family, it was so hard for me to leave because I felt like I was kind of giving up a part of my dream, which was having that beach lifestyle, not even realizing that, you know, in less than 2 years later, I'd be living on an island. And so I always tell people, trust God because he will give you the desires of your heart. It just may not look the way that you think. And I'm going to tell you, this is actually better, I think, than living in California.
My people in LA will challenge you. But I will say this, that I left LA at 18 years old, 1993. I graduated high school and I went to college in New York City area, right? And then I stayed out there until 2008, like 15 years in New York City. So I hadn't lived in LA for a long time, but because I grew up there, I always considered myself sort of an LA kid. Well, in 2018, we moved back there, and within 6 months, I was already ready to hightail it out of LA. because it had changed. It wasn't the same as the way I remembered it, and I feel like I was just more New York. That New York kind of atmosphere suited to me better than LA, which surprised me. Right? It was one of those things that was sort of shocking to me as an adult, where I was like, man, I've always been kind of LA, but now I'm kind of New York. So I guess it's because I spent my formative years as an adult in actually New York. So what part of South Carolina are you from? South Carolina is a great state.
Yeah, it's a great state. I'm from a really small town called Ellery, South Carolina. Ellery, Santee, anybody watching from that area? Hey. Like literally little one stoplight towns, that's
wow.
where we're from. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember driving through South Carolina. This is a true story. It was one of the craziest things I ever saw. It was probably around 2002, maybe 2001, somewhere in there. I was down there doing, there was a conference. There was a big conference around the field that I was working in. Mm-hmm. And as we were driving, we pulled up on this gas station, and it was literally like a scene from like the 1950s. What's that one where the family comes from the small town and Beverly Hillbillies? Okay, like like the car, the truck had like no doors. It was the craziest thing. The guy literally had like the overalls with the straw stick. I was like, what is going on? So that's a true funny story from South Carolina.
Like that.
I was like, what decade are we in? Like, did we just time warp? It was just really funny. So anyway, so what did you get your degree in at UNC?
Communications, UNC.
That's what I said.
I have to think that, UNC, University of North Carolina.
Yeah. So
yeah,
communications. Mm-hmm. And then when you went into LA, did you work in that field?
Yeah. So in communications, communications is one of those degrees that's kind of like business, right? It's kind of like a blanket where you can take it and you can do a lot of different things with it. So that was one of the reasons why I chose that. But believe it or not, when I went to LA, I was actually pursuing acting because I really loved acting. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I love this. I love being on stage. And it's so funny because now I'm like, oh my gosh, back then I didn't realize that the entire reason that I went through that stage of acting was preparing me actually for motivational speaking, which is what I really loved. And so I knew even from a young girl that I was going to use my voice in some way. Now I can't sing, but I knew that I was going to use my voice in some way to inspire people. I just didn't know what that looked like. And so I remember, like, how every year you get birthday presents, you get Christmas presents. There are two presents that I remember the most. The first one was like my Cabbage Patch Kid, which I think every girl remembers the first time she got her Cabbage Patch Kid or her first Barbie, right? But the only other gift that I remember from my childhood was when my mother bought me a microphone. She brought me a microphone, and I guess I really wanted it or something, but I remember she gave me a microphone, and this was back when we had cassette tapes, right? Mm-hmm. So this was as a kid, right? Like 8 years old, something like that. I would take the microphone and I'd be like, all right, guys, coming up, we got the new song by Michael Jackson, and then I would play the song that I had recorded off the radio, like I was becoming like a DJ,
right?
So even from a young kid, playing around, I was in some ways doing what I do now. And so I tell people, a lot of people say, well, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my passion is. I'm like, it's already there. You just don't think about it in the form of it being something that you can actually provide an income from. So I would see myself as a kid. I would see myself on stage speaking, but I just didn't know what that was. So I did the next best thing, right? I thought that I was going to go into journalism. So in high school, I had internships at radio stations. I thought I wanted to be a news anchor. So I was kind of building my career up for that, starting in radio, then television. And then when I went to college and I started really getting into journalism classes and getting into my internships, which I always recommend to young people, you have an opportunity to do as many internships as you do, because it's going to give you an actual, it's going to give you a spotlight into what it's like to live the lifestyle of a certain career. A lot of people will say, well, I want to make the money of that career, or I want to have the perks of that career, but they don't actually look at, well, what's the kind of work I'm going to be doing on a day-to-day basis in order to get that? And what I realized when I was pursuing journalism, what bleeds leads. And so there was a period of time in college where I was actually starting to feel the onset of like depression. And I was like, what's wrong with me? Why am I sad? Why do I feel sad all the time? I realized it was because I was watching the news every day. And so I knew, I was like, man, I really want to do this, but I can't do this. I can't be talking about negative things, watching negative things all the time. So God, just show me, lead me to where it is that I want to be. And that's kind of how I ended up falling in love with acting. And then I went to LA, and that's what I was actually doing in LA when I first got there for the first few years.
Awesome. So when you went there, did you just go? Did you already have a gig, or you just said, I'm going? This is what I want to do. I'm going, and I'm gonna get there, and I'm just gonna go for it.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody. I had a friend, another friend from college, and she was going to be moving there for an internship as well. But we had the mentality of we're going to go and we're going to meet people when we get there. And that's what I did, and I think I've always kind of had that personality. Like a lot of people say, you picked up and moved to an island. And I'm like, well, if you looked at my life before, it shouldn't be that surprising that I would do something like that. I remember being 16 and in my little small town, they didn't have any jobs. So I talked to my cousin who lived in Atlanta, and I said, can I move to Atlanta for the summer so I can get a job? Right. And I did. It literally happened like the next day. Like I was in Atlanta working, looking for work, as a 16-year-old. So I've always had that mentality of if it's something that I want, I'm gonna go get it. So, I'll make friends when I get there.
So that's interesting. So do you think that drive came by nature, by nurture? Did you have a love of wanting to have money in your hand or independence, or like what was it that you thought? Because that's an interesting story to just say, hey, look, there's no jobs here. Let me call my cousin. And the reason why I say that is because one of the things I heard one time from people who immigrate to the country was they couldn't understand, like, if there's no jobs in New York, but there's jobs in Phoenix. They couldn't understand it because they were like, so do you need special papers, like to go from one state to another? Like, is there a separate driver's license? Like they were trying to process, if there's no jobs in New York, why don't you just go to Arizona or whatever else? And so so where do you think that comes from for you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think that first of all, I think that's a great question. I honestly think it has to be nature. It can't be nurture, because if you look at my siblings are actually very, very different than I am. Like if, for example, if you took like my older sister, who we actually look very much alike, like people get us confused because we look so much alike, but our personalities are completely the opposite. And we grew up in the same exact household. So it can't be nurture. It has to be, nature. And I am the second born, which is the rebel. So I think that that's part of it. I've always had a spirit for adventure. I've always looked for adventure and how I could have an amazing life. And so for me, I think that's what I've always kind of chased, is like, man, I don't know, even just, I guess, growing up in a small town, I guess I always had this feeling of like, there's just so much more out there that I want to see. The world is so big and I can't just stay here. Like I got to go out and see and have this experience. So I think that's what drives me, really.
So when you said that, you said, I got some notes here. That's why I keep looking down. And I'm like, I'm writing notes because I want to come back. So there's a couple things. Number one, when you got to LA, you went into acting. You said that you've always wanted to do something with your voice. We've already established that you got courage, right? So how did you transition? And I say this because there's going to be a lot of people that might not get any value from what we talk about today when we talk about the last part of what we're talking about, which is sort of the projects you're working on now, because they already have a preconceived notion of our industry, right? But I believe right now you can give a lot of people value that they can take away from, because most of the people I know wish that they could speak on a subject, but they get so nervous or scared or don't know where to start or whatever it is. So I know sort of the challenges. I know how I did it and how I built my business doing that. My business was tailored specifically to college campuses, right? So I had maybe a different route. So what is it that when you decided to go that route, and then how did you kind of sort of pick the topic or the subject, or, put that together and have the confidence to say, okay, I can build a business around this?
Sure. So, so I was living in LA. I was actually working a job that I hated. And anybody who's heard me speak, probably you've heard this story. I was working this job that I absolutely hated. I was working in IT, completely the opposite of my personality, right? I was like a mentor who said, hey, you should do this because you're really smart and you'd make a lot of money. That's why I tell people, don't chase the money, chase the dream, trace who it is that you want to become, because even if you make a lot of money, if you're unhappy, you're going to spend all the money trying to make yourself happy. And so you're still going to end up, it just doesn't make any sense. So I was working that job, and a friend of mine invited me out to a personal development workshop or event. And at the time, I knew nothing about personal development. I'd read books and things like that, but I didn't know anything about personal development or transformation, anything like that. And she basically said, listen, her father had just passed away. And she said, the only way I'm making it through this thing without like seriously going crazy is because of what I'm learning in this workshop. And she said, I think that you should do this too, because I know that you have these dreams, but you don't know how to make them happen, or you're just feeling like you don't know what to do. And so I honestly went to the workshop because her dad had just passed away. I was like, I can't tell her no. Like, I'm trying to help her, like comfort her. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go to your workshop. And so I went to that workshop, and there was just something in it that piqued my interest. And they were just basically talking about how to create the life that you want, and really figuring out what's been holding you back. And I think one of the things they talked about was, being a person where you feel like you have all this potential, but you're not living out that potential, and what's blocking you. And so I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. It was like $600. I had never paid that much for anything just to help myself. And I was like, but I got to do something. So for me, it was just like, what I'm doing isn't working. So I got to do something. So I paid the $600. I took that course for a week. It was every day for a week. And at the end of that course, it was like everything had changed. It was like I understood all of my internal blocks. I understood why I was miserable and feeling miserable. It was like I understood the relationship better with my parents and my siblings, things that anger, little things that you're upset about over the years that you never bring it out and talk about. And you realize like all of that stuff is blocking you from being the person that you really want to be, because you've got all these walls up. And so I remember leaving that workshop. And one of the things that I was unhappy about was how much money that I was making. I felt like I was contributing a lot to the team. And I had not gotten a raise the year before and all that kind of stuff. And so I walked back into my office and I said, I'm going to get a raise. I'm going in there. I'm going to ask for this raise. I'm going to ask for the amount of money that I believe that I deserve. And I'm going to get that amount of money, whether it's here or it's somewhere else. So the vision, I had learned how to set a vision and not be attached to the how. See, all before I was attached to the how. Well, they're not going to give it to me. Nobody got a raise. How can I be the one to go in and ask for a raise? And what about the time I get paid and things like that? Like, you start to think of all of these things of why it can't happen. We hold ourselves back, and then we see ourselves being in the same position over and over again. But in that time period, I realized that I could have a vision of what I wanted, and I could make it happen. And so I went in and I talked to my manager, and my manager said, no. He was like, no, nobody's getting a raise, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, thank you very much. I had a smile on my face. I walked back to my desk, and I knew that everything was going to be fine because I was not attached to the how. I knew I was going to make that amount of money. And I said, okay. And I went home that day, started looking for jobs. The next day, I walked into my office. My manager called me in, and he said, you know what? I thought about what you said yesterday, and you're right. You do go over and beyond. You've done this, this, and this, and this. These are all the things that I see in you. And yes, I agree. You do deserve a raise. And so I'm going to make that happen for you. And it was like, oh my God. It was a feeling of like, it worked. And so I didn't know exactly how it all worked, but I knew that I had figured out something that was going to change my life forever. And so for me, that was what I wanted to share with the world. I said, everybody needs to know this.
Right.
Everybody needs to know this. And so that's why when you look at my workshops, you look at my speaking, it's all centered around personal development. It's all centered around personal development because that's what really changed my life. Understanding my blocks, understanding how to let them go, creating a vision, and then attracting that, bringing it into you, making it happen no matter what.
Got you. Bob Proctor, right? We get the privilege of having that going on. That's awesome. So I love what you said. You learn to set a vision and not be attached to the how. So I was always taught by my greatest mentor, his name is Errol Webley, is that the why you do something or the vision is always more important than the how, right? As long as the how is morally and ethically legal and so on and so forth, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what it is, the why, because most people think that they need the how, but they never develop the why. They never decide that this is what they want, and therefore they get nothing because they've never made a decision, right? So that's awesome. So with that being said, I like what you said there, is that you were able to understand that, wow, I just had this success and everybody needs to know this.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward to today, right? Or this past year, when someone called you up and introduced you to the concept of trading foreign currency. Now, is that something that you had ever done before? Had you already been habitually investing, or, you know, why were you open to sort of listening to something like that? Is it just that you've always been open by nature to opportunity, or how did that go?
You know, it's so funny. I've always been open to opportunity, but certain opportunities. And I say all that for a reason, because I know some people, we're probably going to talk about the industry of like network marketing, things like that. And so it was actually brought to me a year before. It was brought to me a year before. And immediately the wall came up. I said, no, absolutely not. Because my friend who brought it to me, she was a network marketer, you know, and she had tried to get me into like her last company. And I was like, no, this really isn't for me. I'd gone to like some of the meetings. I'm like, I think I like what you guys are saying, but this is not for me. Okay. And I had left a position where I had been traveling all around the country speaking. And so every time I went to a different city and there would be all these people in the audience and things like that, people would bum rush me and try to get me into their businesses. And, you know, and I was like, oh, they're looking at me and they're like, she speaks to a lot of people. She can help me, you know, build my business, get up the ranks.
Right.
It very much felt like people were trying to use me. And so I just kind of had a wall up. So when she first brought it to me and she was talking about it, I said no. And I'm so sad now that I'm like, well, how much further could I have been now if I had said yes then, right? Why? All because they had network marketing attached to it. And so fast forward a year later, when I decided that I wanted to move to the Dominican Republic. So it was really the why. It was like, okay, I made the decision first. I'm going to move to the Dominican Republic. Then I had to figure out, okay, so how am I going to provide for myself when I'm moving to a Spanish speaking country? I speak for a living. How am I going to provide for myself, right? That was it was actually my mentors who mentioned trading to me, and she said, you should learn how to trade. She said, you know, when I was kind of going through that transition, she'd actually moved to the Dominican Republic herself for a few months, just to kind of reconnect with her soul and herself, and how she provided for herself was through trading. Right. And so when she mentioned that to me, that you should really think about it, and you should think about a way to also get residual income coming in, that's when I was like, oh, okay. God, I hear you. You've given me an opportunity to get residual income and to trade in the markets and compound my money and create, you know, unlimited wealth, basically. So I went back to my friend and I said, hey, can you tell me again about Forex? Can you tell me again, like, how do you make money doing that? And she explained everything. And then I said, all right, cool. I'm signing up. I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it work. Like, I had the attitude of, not will this work? I had the attitude of, I have to make this work because I'm moving to another country. So I'm going to make this work.
I got you. So what was that feeling the first time? Because I don't think people understand, like that first time you put in a trade, right? And it goes into profit and you turn like a penny, right, into $1 or $2. Because I know I was like, oh, everybody need to know this, right? Like, I just turned a penny into $5 or something, right? You know, so what was that like for you?
Yeah, my first trade with real money, I turned a dime. I thought it was a penny at the time because I didn't understand trading that much. I made money and I didn't even know how I made money, but I had turned 10 cents into $1.50, and I was like, this is like magic. That's how I felt. I was like, it's like magic. And I was like, I can just create money from pressing buttons on my phone. And so I told like my brother-in-law, my sister, my dad, my cousins. I told everybody, I'm like, yo, we gotta do this. We gotta get on. We gotta do this. You gotta come do this with me. So yeah, it's a great feeling. And the first time you turn $10 into $100, that was for me was really, that was like a high. It was like, oh my God, if I did this like every hour, like right. Okay, now if I did that with $10, if I had traded $100 on that same trade, oh my gosh, I would have made about like, right. Yeah, that's when you start to say, okay, this is good stuff.
That's when managing your expectations comes in a little, especially because we're always taught to dream big, right? Like, you know, you come from that, you know, so, but you also, and you've already proven to yourself that you can get what you ask for. But with compound interest, it works best when you divide it over time, right? Yes. So once you understand that part, but yes, it is so exciting. Like I remember when I first put in trades and I started to think to myself, all of the business ideas where I had submitted proposals and I had submitted funding and I got turned down, or I had gone in front of people looking for investors or whatever. The moment I saw that, I said, I never have to depend on anybody else to fund what I wanted, what I'm passionate about. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was setting up a community center, because I worked in nonprofit for a long time, right? And the worst thing about nonprofit is that oftentimes you're depending on donations from the city or other foundations that they don't really care. They have to give out money. And so they put these stipulations there. And I just thought, how cool would it be if you could just fund these ideas yourself, and do them the way they're supposed to be done? And just, so that was exciting for me. And then just thinking about my family, being able to help, you know, my family, and have my wife at the time learn the skill, and my son. So that, because if they learned it, if something happened to me, they could always take it because they know how to trade. So I was excited about that. So you said something interesting early on. You said that you recommended internships, and you recommended internships because it allowed you to walk the steps of that career and see what the day-to-day activity looked like. We don't necessarily have internships, but what we have is mentorship, right? Which gives us sort of the same opportunity. What would you rate the value, in your honest opinion, of having people like Sakina Abdul-Jalil, having people like Hafiz Khan, having access to people like Jewel Tankard, and of course, and Wanda Webb, you know, who have already walked that walk and have a vested interest in helping you succeed?
Oh my gosh. It is probably one of the most phenomenal things I've ever seen, especially as a woman of color, you know, because oftentimes I'm used to being in companies and being in corporations where I felt like I had to fight to get a seat at the table, where you felt like people were trying to undermine you. You felt like you're carrying your whole race and all the women that are coming along with you, carrying them on your back. And I have to say the perfect thing, and I have to do it exactly right, because if I don't do it right, they'll never give somebody that looks like me another opportunity again. You know, these are the kind of things that we have to deal with in our careers. And so coming into this space and seeing women and men, you know, just in general, seeing people who, they are not there to hurt you or harm you or try to put you down, or they're not intimidated by you. When they see potential in you, they're like, oh, how can we take that and make you greater? How can we pull you along? And this is what I've been teaching for years, you know, like you don't have to see everybody as competition, see people as collaboration. And this company, I can honestly say, has done that. Like my mentors, like I have a mentor right now who makes $50,000 per month. Okay. Usually in corporate America, if somebody's making $50,000 per month, you can't even spot them or see them in the hall. Like you're trying to get to them. Whereas with her, and I'll just tell you, Tamara Boykin Young, she is amazing. Tamara Young is amazing. You guys should all, you know, everybody should follow her, watch what she does. She's amazing. But I reached out to her and she's like, hey, yeah, how can I help you? What do you need? Let me help you. And so I'll just say, just speechless. And so the things that she's doing with her group, Rich Girls Trade, and the things that Wanda Webb is doing with leaving a legacy and with Legacy Worldwide, like this is the type of mentorship I've always wanted for my entire life. This is the type of sisterhood that I wanted when I joined a sorority that I didn't always feel like I got, you know? This is the type of experience I've always wanted, and being able to bring other women along and other men. I have men in my group as well, on my team as well, okay? Not just women, but I think there's a special place in my heart for helping women to be in positions where they feel included, where they feel empowered, and where they have strategies for success. And that's what I feel like I've really gotten from here, like the mentorship, like even if I didn't trade, the mentorship is worth it just being a part of this company. I heard somebody say that today on my team. She was like, what I am learning just in mentorship and leadership alone, she was like, trading is just, that's icing on the cake, you know? She's like, this is the stuff that's going to help me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head. First of all, to all the people on Facebook, I can see you. Thank you guys for tuning in and joining in and watching. We appreciate you. Can't comment to you right now, but I definitely see you over there. But yeah, so the mentorship, I think people miss out on that, but that's also the mark of not only a good company, but also a good team, right? A good organization that you're a part of. Because I remember the first company I was ever a part of is it is the largest company. We don't have to talk about them right now, but they have one of the largest teams ever. I remember when the person from that team passed away, the leader, the head of the organization. And when I went on his Facebook page, there were tens of thousands of people who said, I was on your team in 1981. I never built the business, but because of what you taught me, I went on and I succeeded here. I went, I did this and I did this and and if people understood that aspect of what they're getting, just even learning how to structure how to do leadership skills, like it's so invaluable. And then, when you look at our industry, it's primarily led by women, right? So what an empowering opportunity, you know what I'm saying, for people to be able to bust through those ceilings and bust through those barriers and create, new opportunities. And so I love this. And I'm so thankful. I grew up in it, but I never, for some reason, as I was growing up, I never knew about the personal development or the mentorship. I only knew about the sales, right? Like for some reason, that's how my brain worked, because I was so shy and so nervous about money and stuff like that, that I never saw that part. So I could never see myself participating in an industry which I grew up in from the time I was 3 years old, until someone said, let me give you a tape. This is how long ago, right? Let me give you a cassette. And I took that home, and the cassette was called Private Franchising in a .com World. I'll never forget it. And when I listened to that cassette, and I realized that at the meeting, I had a guy who worked in finance on Wall Street. I had a guy who assisted in heart transplant surgery. I had my manager at the car dealership, and I had already been an entrepreneur before. And I said, I got all of these successful people right there at that meeting. And then I was like, wait a second, this is, so from my activist world and my background of working in nonprofit, if I went and moved to another city, which I had before, if I wanted them to come down and help me, I had to pay them. Like, these people came on their own merit. Like, I was just like, I was blown away. So the mentorship, I believe, is exactly right. It's invaluable.
And I don't think a lot of people know that. I didn't. I had no idea. And if it wasn't for, like I said, one of my mentors saying, this is everything that you need, everything that you want to do, everything that you love doing, this is the avenue that's going to give you that. I never would have thought that. And I remember when I joined, one of the leaders on the team, I sat down because he was a motivational speaker as well. And he said, there are a lot of motivational speakers out there. There are a lot of motivational speakers who can give people hope, who can give them guidance. But there's not a lot of motivational speakers who can actually say, I made somebody a millionaire. And this gives you the opportunity to do that. And I was like, wow, yeah.
What I saw early on was I didn't really consider myself a motivational speaker. I was a public speaker, but people would call me motivational. But what I loved about this industry almost right away, I got it, and it was part of Errol Webley taught me it, was that what the difference is when I go out and I can talk and I can give someone hope, there's no vehicle attached to it. So they leave with inspiration, but they go back to the same frustration that they
Yeah.
had previously. Now I can empower my team with the same vehicle I'm using, right? So I can attach a vehicle to it and I can say, here you go. This is how you do it, right? And so to me, it's super powerful. Like I don't know, the other day, I think I mentioned it on one of the presentations I did. I had someone on my team who had been let go from work, and I was nervous for them, you know, coronavirus, whatever. He's a dad, and he said, thanks, because of this opportunity, I'm a free man. When he told me that, I was like, oh my God. And that just made me double down. Like, I'm really all in now, right? Like, I'm free. He said, I'm free because of Forex. I don't ever have to go back to that job. I was like, wow, that's so powerful. So I was excited. Now, you mentioned another thing, having strategies for success. I think that's important. Would you say that that plays not only a role in trading, but just in sort of an idea of, you know, you don't want to just be out there doing willy-nilly stuff, you know, even in life, right? Like, you had a game plan to get to the Dominican Republic once you made that decision, right? You didn't just say, I don't know what I'm going to do, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's funny because a lot of the strategies from trading, I actually use that in my leadership as well. Like, one of the things that we always say in trading is don't let a winning trade turn into a losing trade. So what that means is when your trade is in profit, lock in some of those profits. You know, move it to the point where no matter what happens in that trade, you made money, right? Well, it's the same thing in leadership. When you see people who have potential on your team, when you see people who have great visions of what they want to do, but then you start seeing them getting discouraged, or they're not showing up for themselves, or they're not getting onto the call so that they can actually take trades. It's like, don't let a winning trade turn into a losing trade. Go back and pick that person up and say, hey, how can we support you? Because that person could be a winner. You know, they win at this. And so, yeah, so I use a lot of the things that I learned from trading. And sometimes, you know, we all know how the market moves. The market will move in a direction and then it'll pull back a little bit. Then it'll continue in that direction and then it'll pull back a little bit. And so there have been times in my business where it felt like maybe I'm not doing things as well as I want to. And I realized I'm just in a pullback.
Yeah.
I'm just in a pullback. And then once I get in that pullback, I get to rest a little bit. I can continue on full throttle, you know? So the leadership, the mentorship has been absolutely amazing in this company. And I just like, yeah, it's just amazing. The things every single day I learn something new that I use in my life and in my business.
Yeah, I think you nailed it again. I think trading is an incredible metaphor for life, right?
Yeah.
You know, when you're pulling back, it's consolidating. That means you're consolidating what's going around, and you're going to then continue on. Like I think I've learned so much from trading that I've been able to apply. So let's get to this. I don't want to hold you too much longer because I know you're going to finish this month out strong and you got a lot of things to get to. But you mentioned that you always wanted to have an amazing life. It seems like you're absolutely doing that right now. What would be one thing that you would recommend to someone through our vehicle if it made sense to them, right? How would you recommend that maybe they get started, or what would one message that you would want to say to them about trading? Because I know there's a lot of people that are nervous about the idea of trading and investing because they have been taught that they're supposed to hand their money over to like a 401k or something like that. And then also because you did have sort of this wall up about our industry, what would be one thing that you feel like you really learned about our industry that was totally different than what you thought? So sort of a two-part question. What sort of trading?
Three parts. I counted three questions. So I hope I can hit all of them. Okay. So first of all, so those people who have been taught, you know, you're supposed to give your money over to someone in a 401k.
Oh no. I think I lost you on my end. Uh-oh. No. Right at the perfect part.
Honestly, like after the first day, everything else went over my head because
There you go. Unmute yourself. I lost you for a second on my end, I think.
okay, all right, okay, good. I was about to say, listen, I live on an island. Yeah, the internet goes out.
I think it was a cloud in Texas. That it'll do that in Texas. The cloud will pass over and everything will stop. So.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so I took that class. It was 4 days. I really didn't understand anything past the first day. But what they gave us during that first day, they gave us a little checklist to determine like what was a good stock and what was a bad stock. Before anybody asks, I know what it is. I've moved like 4 times since that time, so I don't even know where it is. It's somewhere in boxes. But they gave us a checklist to figure out what was a good stock, what was a bad stock. I went home after that class and I called up my financial advisor and I said, hey, can you just show me the stocks that you have my money in? Because honestly, I had no idea what my money was in. She sent me the list of stocks and I just went through the checklist and there were A stocks, B stocks, C stocks, and D stocks. That's how they taught us how to categorize them. She had me in all C and D stocks. And I was in shock. I was like, what? Oh my gosh. And so I reached out to her. I said, listen, take me out of this, take me out of this, take me out of this, put me in this, you know. And I said, from now on, anytime you want to trade with my money, you know, anytime you want to buy or sell something with my money, I need you to send it to me first so that I can go and do a review. Okay. She started doing that. And within 30 days, no lie, within 30 days, she reached out to me and she said, Tammy, I said, yeah. She said, I just have a quick question. How are you picking out these stocks? And I said, oh, I'm just using like a checklist. Why? And she said, because every one of the stocks that you picked out, they've skyrocketed. And for me, that was a moment of just like complete awareness of like what I had done in my life. I'd gone to school, gotten a good degree, you know, made great grades. I was smart. I was hardworking. I was going after my career. I was doing all the things that I wanted to do that a smart girl does. And yet I had given my money over to somebody else because I believed that she could handle my money better. Why? Because she worked for Charles Schwab, right? Not realizing that in one day of taking a stock market class, I now knew more than her about how to handle my money. And I was livid, honestly. I was livid, honestly. So I'll tell everybody out there, no one is ever going to care about your money the way that you care about your money. So you better learn. There are people right now, and I see it every day on my timeline, they're afraid to look at their 401k. Or they say, I looked at my 401k and I cried, you know, because they feel completely disempowered. There's nothing they can do about it. Why? They gave their money over to somebody else to handle. And so it behooves you to learn about how the market moves. It behooves you to learn how to handle your own money. You got to do it. And even if you continue to have a financial advisor, at least be able to advise your financial advisor on what you want with your money. So that's the first thing I'll say to people who are like, I'm used to doing it this way. This is the way that we're taught to do it. I don't trust myself with my own money. Well, let me tell you something. You better start trusting yourself, because that person you trusted with your money, you don't know what they actually know about money. You don't know. So it's important for us to learn. It's important for us to learn, especially women. It is important for us to learn. Most women now, like the head of their household, like what in the world? So it's important for us to learn. So I'll say that. The second question I think that you asked was people getting started and saying yes, and how to do what you do. And I'll just say this right here, okay? If you're interested in doing it, try it. You can't go wrong from trying something new. You can try something and say it didn't work, I didn't enjoy it, it's not for me. But at least you can say, I know what that is. I know a little bit about that now. I took a real estate investing course, and honey, when I got home, I was like all excited. And then I started handwriting all those postcards. And I was like, this is not for me. This is not for me. But I am so happy that I went and I learned that information so that if I ever need to use it, I have it. I know how to invest in real estate. And so knowledge and education, no one can ever take that away from you. Learn. And the way that we have it set up is the best way that I've ever seen. You get to earn and learn at the same time. You get to learn from people who are making 6 and 7 figures trading. They let you check the same trades they're taking. All you have to do is copy and paste. I've never seen anything like it. And so I tell people, get started. Go to our academy. You don't like it, in 5 days, you have a 5-day grace period. You don't like it, get your money back. But I guarantee you won't. Why? Because you're going to enjoy it. You're going to realize this is easier than it seems. People have made this thing seem like this really hard thing to do. And when you're realizing that most of the time you're adding and subtracting 10, if you can add and subtract 10, you can trade. That's what I always tell people. Right. You know? So the way I always say this, and one of my mentors, Les Brown, mentored me for about 2 years. And it was like the greatest mentorship I think I've had as a speaker. Like, he was phenomenal. And one of the things I remember him saying was, you can't practice in front of the mirror forever. At some point, you got to take the stage. Woo. At some point, you got to take the stage. And so I have people all the time who will come back months and months on end and like, hey, I have another question. Hey, what about brokers? Hey, and you're looking up all these questions to ask before you say yes. And the truth is, having those answers aren't actually going to help you to say yes. Having those answers aren't going to help you make money. The only thing that's going to help you to make money is just saying yes and getting in there and doing it and having enough confidence in yourself and belief in yourself to say, I am smart enough to figure this out. If I have mentors, if I have a system in place, I have a team that's going to help me. I got people who are there to support me. I can do this and I can figure it out. So asking 50 million questions isn't going to help you. The only thing that's going to help you is saying yes and making a commitment to your own success. And then network marketing. See, I remembered all 3 of your questions. Network marketing. Those of you who previously have had a wall up around network marketing. And I will tell you from the first, I had the biggest wall of all. And I knew when I joined this company, I said, I want to be a chairman, right? I want to be a chairman. I'm going to be, because as a chairman, I felt like I could help the most people. I could speak.
Boom. Okay.
Stuff, right? And so what I had to do was I actually had to build belief in the industry. So I started listening to podcasts. There are some really great podcasts out there. MLM, the MLM Network, I think, is one. Network Marketing Heroes, GoPro. There's several of them out there. And what I started doing is every single day I would inundate myself listening to interviews. All they do in this podcast, they interview people who have made 7 figures or more in network marketing. And what you'll find is that most people have done it in 4 years or less. And so for me, I had to build belief in the industry, because the truth is, network marketing before, I'd only seen people who were unsuccessful. So that's why I didn't believe in the industry. And I think there's a lot of people who feel that way. I've never met anybody who made 6 figures. I've never met anybody who made it to the top. Well, you got to start surrounding yourself with people who did make it to the top. So that's what I did. I created virtual mentors. So every day I just heard stories about how people created 6 figures in this business. And that instilled in me that, yes, I can do this too. Yes, this is possible. And yes, it will happen for me.
That's amazing. So you touched on so many things right there. I love, that was so strong. You can practice in the mirror forever, but at some point you have to take the stage. Analysis paralysis will kill you in a lot of different things. That was strong. I didn't actually know that you had Les Brown, of course. That's amazing. We should have got into that a little more, but that's okay. Build up the ladder of belief. You said build belief. My mentor, Errol Webley, always taught me that you have to take people and build them up the ladder of belief, right? He used to always say, if you believe in me, I'll believe in you enough until you can believe in yourself.
Oh, I love that.
And so it was so true. Errol Webley was such a blessing in my life, because I've never met anybody who mastered relationships better than him, and understood that in our industry, it's a people business. No matter which type of business, no matter what product that it is, and he always strategic. Where relationship stops, your business stops. So he would build great relationships downline, far, 100 people in depth. He would know their story. He would know about their families. He would know about so much. I mean, just an amazing, amazing mentor. But one of the other things that he taught me, only looking for people who are looking, right? Because a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, right? So you're only looking for people who are looking, and clearly you've been looking for your whole, you wanted an amazing life. And you know what, you said something else that resonated with me, which was that you were a smart girl. And so I want to finish on this because it's obvious that you're smart, that you're brilliant, that you're accomplished. And so I just have to ask you, how does someone with that level of intellect choose Chicago style pizza over New York style pizza? How does that even happen? How do we even get this?
Better. It is so much better.
This is unheard of.
If you have not had Chicago style pizza, you are sleeping. Okay?
I've been to Chicago.
And you like New York with all that
You in New York. Look,
ripping off. It's too big. You can't even hold it in your hand.
Hold it. It's perfect. It's perfect. You know what? Pizza should only have cheese. Anything else is extra, right? That's what it is. That's nice. Anyway, listen, I really, really appreciate your time and you taking the time to do this. It means a lot. I think a lot of people are going to have got a lot of value out of it. If you got some value out of it, please share it. Please let people hear her story, okay? Because I can tell you right now, she is not only crushing her career, but she's also crushing her second career here in the Dominican Republic. Her team is absolutely growing at a rapid rate. She's successful in the market, and you can hear that she really has a passion. What she said was, I saw chairman, which in our company is the top rank that you can go to. I saw chairman not for money, but for impact. And those are the type of people that you want to associate with. So sis, I really appreciate you taking the time and spending with us. And it was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. I really do. All and right. You have a great afternoon and go get you some Chicago style pizza. You just haven't had it yet. I'm sure of it.
You have a good one, sis. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you later.